And what is up, everybody? Okay, I'm bringing something up that I was supposed to bring up a while back, because basically just for the sole purpose of educating the masses on this. Um, Back when Pacific Rim first came out, there was a bunch of people I was excited. I wanted to go see it, but a bunch of people were very, very skeptical. It was like, oh, what? It's just copying. It's basically just copying off of Power Rangers. And you know what Power Rangers was copying off of, right? Power Rangers was copying off of Voltron, and that could not be any further from the truth. People who say that have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Granted, the only thing that Voltron and Power Rangers have in common is that they are both Americanized versions of a Japanese product. Okay, but as far as the timeline goes, let's go to 1993. The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, right? Okay, that's 1993. Voltron came out in the 80s. Right? Power Rangers was basically the Americanized version of a long-running Japanese series called Super Sentai. And by the time we were introduced to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the Super Sentai series Zyuranger that Mighty Morphin was based off of came out and aired in Japan in 1992. So in 1993, yeah, of course, there was the, there goes the, that was the series it was based off of. So we were already a year behind. However, we were a year behind when it came to that particular series. However, as far as Super Sentai was concerned, when Power Rangers had its 20th anniversary, and they had the Legendary War, bringing back a few Rangers. Jason David Frank came back to the show as the Green Ranger, and for Super Mega Force for the Legendary War. Okay, celebrating the 20th anniversary. Great. Well, the footage for that particular episode was taken from the movie special made for the two Power Rangers that made up both Megaforce and Super Megaforce, as well as the fact that it was their 35th anniversary special. By the time we were introduced to Super Sentai, we were already 15 years behind the learning curve. There's a bunch of Super Sentai shows that still haven't made it to the United States. Not to mention the fact that I think there's basically as people waiting for Power Rangers to basically stop. But as long as there's Super Sentai, there's gonna be Power Rangers, because they keep on putting out Super Sentai shows, and every time they do, it's a new cast, completely different story. And of course, they're just gonna keep going along with it. So, that being said, Super Sentai started in 1975, while Voltron, who was a parody of the Super Sentai, the show that Voltron was the anime that it was based off of was called, in Japan, Beast King Go Lion, came out in 1981. By this time, there was hundreds of Japanese robot, giant robot animes, as well as I forget the name of their live action, the Japanese live action superhero genre. And that being said, Voltron was copying off of that. Another thing that both Voltron and Power Rangers have in common is that Beast King Go Lion was a flop in Japan. So when it was introduced as Voltron, the Japanese animators had to make more episodes for the American audience. Like I find that absolutely hilarious. The show's dead, but they have to make more episodes for the they have to make more episodes for the American audience. That's how Fleet of Doom came to be, because in Japan there was no, there was no Voltron, and there definitely wasn't two different Voltrons. It was Beast King Go Lion and Dairugger 15. Dairugger 15 being the vehicle Voltron that we know and don't really care about. Fleet of Doom was made specifically for the American audience. As much as I loved it, that's about the only time Voltron fans even tolerate the vehicle Voltron. But I digress. So, Power Rangers, or Zyuranger, did the same thing. In Zyuranger, the character Burai, who is the Green Ranger, is supposed to die. Of course, they can't do that in an American kids TV show. So they made it that Tommy the Green Ranger lost his powers, and that was supposed to be the natural progression of it. The show was supposed to end. They had no intention of giving the show a second season. They had already put out 40 episodes. There was already the last episode that they decided, it was going to be it. But something interesting happened. A bunch of kids started writing in and basically complaining that they better give Tommy his powers back. They won't eat. They won't go to school. They won't take a bath. This, that, the other. Basically kids said that they were going to riot. That forced Saban to have to start. Now, Saban, being like the biggest importer of Japanese shows, Saban was the company that brought Dragon Ball to the United States, including Dragon Ball Z, before Funimation ruined it. Saban brought Power Rangers over and was doing a pretty good job till they sold it to Disney. And Disney ruined it, and they eventually got the rights back. Saban brought Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, which was actually Kamen Rider Ryuki. Granted, Kamen Rider Ryuki was a better story, but I understand why they went the way they did with Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, because kids would not have understood that. Nonetheless, basically it was Masked Rider, Kamen Rider, mixed with Highlander, as in there can be only one. Let's just leave it at that. And they had to, basically Saban had to start shooting more, had to shoot more American footage. And on top of that, they had to go back to the company, and the company had to shoot more Japanese and more stock footage for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And the show was over for for over a year, and they had to, and this was basically known as Zyuranger 2 in Japan, due to the fact that these episodes weren't released in Japan. They were in the Power Rangers version of them, but this was not for the Japanese audience. It was strictly for the American audience, because you had the Green Ranger back, and that's what ultimately continued the show into getting a second season, into replacing Megazord with a completely different, what was supposed to be a completely different Ranger set, but they decided to keep the costumes, this, that, the other. They rewrote it in a certain way, having Tommy become the White Ranger, because there was no Green Ranger. Well, technically there was, but they weren't gonna switch the colors around this time. And if for anybody who's ever watched Power Rangers throughout the years, they would have noticed that sometimes there's a Black Ranger, sometimes there's a Green Ranger. as far as the original, the starting 5 or 3. When there's a starting 5 Rangers, sometimes it's either green or black. They'll swap out with green or black, and the first Sentai group was a Green Ranger. It wasn't until like a majority for a while of the Yellow Rangers were actually boys. Even in Mighty Morphin Zeo Ranger, Yellow Ranger was supposed to be a boy. In fact, in Zeo Ranger, the character's name was Boy. I don't know how they screwed that up. That being said, this was basically just a means of clearing up any confusion or just any ignorance that anybody might have had. Because let's be honest, there is no original stories under the sun. Okay, everything borrows from some point. Not to mention the fact that like it all came from Japan anyway. I don't necessarily watch Power Rangers that much because some of the stories are entirely too kiddie, too cheesy. They're hard to follow. I don't necessarily care. While Voltron obviously was a classic, and if they were to, thanks to Guillermo del Toro making Pacific Rim, it shows that yes, Power Ranger reboot, absolutely possible, which is what they're trying to do. A Voltron movie, absolutely possible, because it's interesting because basically what he did was he revived 2 different genres. All in the same time, all at the same time, or basically just the one genre. He basically brought it back to life in the United States because he was such a big fan of both. And to see that start to happen more often in Hollywood, I'm very excited. And you know what? Like I said, it's all relative. I love it all anyway. I'm done talking. You guys have a good night.